He's all set.
Okay. The Wednesday, November 16th, 2022 meeting of the Mount Pleasant Zoning Board of Appeals is now called to order. Mr. Kinch, will you please take roll?
White.
Here.
Stressman.
Present.
McGuire.
Present.
Friedrich.
Here.
Orlick.
Here.
Raisinen.
Here.
We have a quorum.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they would like to make to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Our agenda is approved. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our October 26, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes?
I have a couple of changes. Page 2, the last paragraph, second line, that the actual point of entry is still facing Broadway. That's kind of an important word there, still facing Broadway. That was what we were talking about there. And the second thing is under public comments. I didn't have the power to close public comments. Should be Racine and close public comment rather than Horlick.
I missed that, Commissioner Orlick. I also have a suggestion back in the same paragraph that Commissioner Orlick mentioned, the last paragraph on page 2, where you're quoting Commissioner Orlick and says he stated that he felt that's why Brian, which are his words, if we could put in parentheses Kinch, just for consistency's sake.
I move approval with the changes.
Second.
We have a motion and a support. All in favor of approving our minutes from October 26, 2022 as amended, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Our minutes are now approved. Let's see, next thing. The next thing on our agenda are communications. Mr. Kinch, are there any communications to report?
I don't have anything at this time.
All right, we have no communications. We will move along to our public hearings this evening. We have 2 cases to present to the board this evening, but before I begin, I would like to state our board procedures. In accordance with our bylaws and board procedures, the appellants will be called forward to state their cases. Following the appellant's presentations, the public hearings for each case will then be opened. Anyone who wishes to address the board will come forward, sign in and state their name and address, which will be made part of the permanent record. Each person will be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. In addition, each person will be allowed to address the board only once unless they have new and pertinent information to share. The public hearing will then be closed. Any correspondence received regarding the cases will be presented to the board. The board will then enter into discussion. All motions will be made in the positive to avoid confusion. This does not necessarily mean the person making the motion is in favor of the request. It will take 3 positive votes to approve a request. Any request which is denied shall not be brought back to the board for a period of 1 year. The board reserves the right to ask questions of the appellants at any point through the hearing. In the event only 3 voting members are present, the appellant has the right to postpone the hearing of the case until the next meeting up to the time their case is called. We have more than 3 voting members present tonight. So, Mr. Kinch, will you please introduce our first case, ZBA 2204?
Excuse me. I'd like to, I'm going to recuse myself from this case. I want to make that clear up front. I have a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire.
This first case that we have this evening, we've identified as case number 22-04. This is an application that had been filed, Tim Beebe on behalf of the owners of Slave and Steve Vaslowski, who own property at 514 South Franklin Street, and also the home that is located at 209 East Maple Street. They are looking to the approved for a side yard variance from 6 feet down to 5 feet on a property that is zoned in the CD3 district. Currently, there is one lot that's made up of 2 homes. You have site plans on your file here. We'll go through those and we'll let the applicant talk a little bit about it as well. But the pertinent sections that we're looking at this evening is 154.405A, which is the standards outlined in the table for the CD3 district. The property lot split can maintain all the other setbacks as well as lot coverage. You've got a couple of site plans that demonstrate compliance with those requirements. What we're looking at is the division between the 2 properties that runs north and south. And they're looking from taking a 6-foot setback down to 5 feet, which would take you right along the eve line of the property at 1014 South Franklin. Property zone CD3, the uses, both single-family dwelling and the duplex are permitted in the district. Duplexes are regulated under a special use permit in the district. They are consistent with our future land use of mixed use, medium density, which again allow for single-family homes and as well as duplexes. This is the section under the table highlighting the section that we're looking at this evening, side setback for the district's 6 feet. There again, all other setbacks for the district as well as lot coverage can be maintained for both properties. Property on the left is the home that is at address at 209 East Maple Street, and then you have the duplex at 1014 South Franklin Street. You'll see that the area in question is the stairs located on the west side of the duplex, which should be the right photo here. It looks like the post, the support, the structure itself is could be on the property line, and both properties would comply with setback requirements. The issue in this case is that the eave along that area extends an additional foot that would prevent it from being able to make that division where both lots would comply. This computer is just, come on. There we go. Site plans that were submitted by Central Michigan Survey, we'll let Mr. Beebe kind of talk about some of those things that are on here, but essentially you show the division line. The district requires a 50-foot setback, or I'm sorry, a 50-foot lot width. There is no lot area requirement any longer for this district, and both properties would have a 50-foot setback. The site plan on the right is going to show us the various setbacks and measurements between the 2 structures. And I'm going to leave that last slide up there, and we'll let Mr. Beebe come forward, kind of talk about what they went through to try to get to this point in the game. So, okay. Are there any questions for me at this time?
Yeah, I have one, Brad, trying to get my head around this case. So if we dealt with that issue of the overhang, and if that went away or was significantly reduced, there wouldn't be any need for that variance. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, if they could take 12 inches off that overhang,
That gives you need
You
a
would
10
need-
and a half, that gives you 12.
you wouldn't need a variance.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, they allow open porches to have a 0 lot line setback in that area. So, okay.
Mr. Beebe, will you please come forward?
Good evening. My name's Tim Beebe. I'm with Central Michigan Surveying Development at 2257 East Broomfield Road here in Mount Pleasant. I do have some photos that if you want to pass down through. They're just a little easier instead of flipping back and forth.
Sure.
Are these the same that I can pass down in, or are they all
They're a
different?
packet. So,
Okay.
but no, they're not all the same. So what we have is a situation that we're trying to bring a non-compliant situation as much into compliance as we can. We have one parcel which has 2 livable structures on, which is not a compliant issue for this area. There's an access stairway which is on the west side of the 514 South Franklin Street. they have an overhang on that. The posts themselves, the structure, it would stay on the property. You would have to take that eave off or that overhang off. Now, that sounds like a relatively simple thing to do. The only thing is, with that, when you're walking up and down those stairs and you're trying to have access, especially during this time of year, that overhang is an important item. That keeps the snow, the rain, and everything else. We're talking about then taking that back, slicing it off basically to the edge of the stairs and giving it less protection from the elements. So what we're hoping to be able to do is obtain a 1-foot side yard variance. This is considered stairway or open porch, and it is allowed to go up to the property line. When we were out doing the boundary survey to start with, we measured everything up and we came back to Brian and said, can I do it to the structure itself or does the overhang count? He said, no, sorry, the overhang counts. So you have to have everything within. And short of going up there and literally cutting it off and cutting the protection for that stairway off, that would be the only way that we could bring that into compliance. The house is set up as a duplex, and this is direct access for the upper level, and we need to keep it active. Access from the street, although it is addressed as Franklin Street, pedestrian access and vehicle access comes off Maple. So I'm not quite certain why it was addressed the way it was, but it is. And that's what those pictures show. There's one picture that if you're looking from Franklin, there is no access point on Franklin Street. And when you're looking at the house, you can't hardly even see the house because the trees and everything that's in front. But the sidewalk access comes up to the porch. There's a covered porch on the Maple Street side. And the driveway access is basically out in front of that stairway. So what we're hoping is that you see the hardship with the weather situations and trying to keep that stairway covered. And it is important to keep it covered, especially during this period of time. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. I believe in your packets, you would have had our surveys, which have all the dimensioning. And if you have any questions on how we went about doing the survey or what we found, be happy to try and answer. And we also have the owners here tonight, so if you have any specific questions for them.
Could the stairway be moved closer to the house to take advantage of the other part of the structure that would then would be covering?
To move the stairway closer to the house. It's actually physically attached to the house.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this picture, you've got the one essentially up to the second story roof.
Right.
And then you've got the overhang, which is protecting the stairway, right?
Yeah, you have, it comes up, turns, and goes back up.
So what I'm wondering is if we could push the stairway closer to the house and take advantage of that other part of the structure, and then we wouldn't have a problem.
I'm not following you, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's, okay, the part with the roof that has that second story porch, the red porch.
How do I get back to the pictures here?
Hit P.
Hit P.
Okay, so that part where that roof is closest to the roof of the house itself and it's a red. Okay, what I'm saying is, could we take the stairway and move it closer there to use that as your coverage?
Yeah, I don't think that would allow enough turnaround at the landing, though.
if you came out of the door, you're on a platform up on the second floor.
Right.
Then you're heading to the north, going down the stairway, then you have the platform, and then you come back down the stairway. You know, those stairways are not excessively wide. So we would have to narrow stairways, I think, in order to do what you're saying.
Okay.
And in order to take furniture and other things up to that second floor, I don't know that it would be practical to reduce that by a foot.
Is that the only access to the second floor?
It is. So, yeah, the way that they have it set up is so that when you're coming down off that stairway, you're coming down to the driveway. They could run that stairway all the way back to the back, and you would access right back by the back fence, and then have to walk all the way back around. I mean, technically, that could be done. It's not a very practical, but it's possible.
Are there other questions for Mr. Beebe?
Our new planning director sent a memo to Brian and raised the issue of, and this is for your larger lot, the impervious surface coverage. And she calculates that once we do this, that lot may run over the maximum of 55% impervious.
That was my question, is that the 209 East Maple house is
Yep.
going to vastly go over the amount of allowed impervious surface space if we allow this.
You're looking at 43%.
One of the things after we had that memo is I reached out to Mr. Beebe's office and got the update, and that's what you see here is on this, one of the surveys. I think it was in the presentation as well. But it gives us the actual calculation.
Which,
So here.
It's on sheet 2 of 5.
Okay.
When you're looking at it, there will be a box.
One of the things that
but
we,
it's not just, I'm not looking at total building area and total lot area for 209 East Maple. I'm looking at total building area, total asphalt. Like, not just structure, but the asphalt driveway that is in between that house and its garage. That's not a yard. That's parking, or it has traditionally been used as parking, and that is impervious surface space. That's not green space.
Okay. What we looked at was the building area. But what you're looking at is a piece of land that is probably 10, 15 by 20. So I can get the calculations, but we would have to, let me grab my phone. If you had 4667 square feet multiplied by 0.55, we can have a total of 2,567 square feet. We have 2,000.
But the 209 East Maple Street, the total lot area is only 4,240 square feet.
So which one are you concerned with?
I'm concerned, green space for 209 East Maple.
209.
I'm concerned with green space for both of them.
Okay.
But I'm also concerned, and I have a question, because traditionally, one of the tenants of that duplex parks in the driveway. The other tenant in the duplex parks behind 209 East Maple off the alley. So where is parking going to go for both of those units? If they're separate and 209 East Maple is its own lot, then 1014 South Franklin no longer has access to parking behind 209 East Maple. So where are the tenants for both units of 1014 South Franklin going to park? And that might be a question for the owners.
Yeah, there's a garage on 209 East Maple.
But if the garage for 209 East Maple belongs to 209 East Maple, that's where they're going to park.
Okay,
There's only one driveway, and there's only room in that driveway for one vehicle. So where are the tenants for both units at 1014 South Franklin going to park?
Brian, what's the required parking?
There is no required parking.
Wouldn't they be allowed to park in the street?
They would be able to park in the street.
We do have limits on street parking in winter months for snow shoveling. So they cannot park in the street all year long.
Well, they just have to abide by the storm warnings. They just have to be aware. They can legally park there, as far as I know.
There's no parking requirements any longer. If you put it in, then that's regulated, but there's nothing that dictates they have to provide on-site parking.
So, which is fine, that part's fine. But if these lots are separated, are you going to tell your tenant, and this is a question for the owners, are you going to tell your tenants which unit does not come with parking?
I guess we would have to, the driveway actually fits two vehicles side by side. It's tight, but is a two-car driveway. But yeah, in the past, both units were fully occupied or occupied. They would park either in the street in front of the house or on side, right, like on the drive. But usually the East Maple Street would only park their vehicles on that side, even though it's got the extended parking. And then the unit upstairs would either park in the driveway alongside the tenants that were underneath. But there was always someone that parked on the street.
And do you plan to continue to own both? I mean, because that's less of an issue if you're renting all of those units. But if you sell, if 209 East Maple is ever sold as a single family dwelling,
Yeah,
there's a
right
lot
now-
of access issues to 1014 South Franklin, especially upstairs, that comes with separating these parcels.
Right now, they're for sale, and the upstairs unit is not occupied, nor is the East Maple house. So that's why we're looking to separate two, to sell them as separate units. But if that doesn't happen, for us, we've been opening for over 20 years, so it's time for us to move on. So we're looking to sell.
I thought I'd seen a for sale sign, so, okay, thank you for answering those questions. Does anybody else have questions for Mr. Beebe or the property owners?
I'd like to answer the one question that you had on
Oh, okay.
If you were to include that driveway space, it's 16 feet wide. It would have to be 35 feet long to come up with the square foot area to put it over 55%. And that's not 35 feet because the house doesn't sit back that far. So the house is sitting back 11 feet at the jut out where the porch is, and then it's additional 4 feet back to the main building. So you're looking at 15 feet by 16, and that would not reach the 55%. The other has the alleyway as its access, and that's not, the backyard is all grass. They may park back there, but they're parking on the grass if they are, but that's all grass space. So on Maple Street, you're looking at 40%. So each of them would meet that 55% maximum impervious.
Now, given that, and it's probably a question for both of you, given that there would need to be a stipulation that you can't pave that area that's now grass, or that would put the property over. Is that correct? In other words, that freezes that as grass.
Yeah.
How, I don't know,
We would check that anyway if someone came in to get a stormwater permit.
And then you would catch that, that's just going
Catch it then.
to catch you over the
Just like
impervious.
anybody, a single-family home, they're coming in to make improvements, whether it's a patio or
Okay.
a deck or anything, we do those calculations in
So,
advance.
so you would catch
Can we put
it.
that as a stipulation that that area
Well,
cannot be
Being in
paved?
the city, under the city's zoning requirements, you
It's
already have
covered.
that stipulation.
Okay.
So in fact, because you would catch it, doesn't matter whether you catch it or we put a stipulation is, that's going to have to stay grass. Is that correct?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you would be putting a stipulation that they have to abide by zoning.
Well,
They would
you
have
know,
to.
no,
They have to, so. Did you have any other questions?
I have a question for Mr. Kench, and then I might want to follow up with you.
Okay.
So in order to meet the current code, it's just the roof part of the lower one, and it's not the entire thing. They would just remove a foot off the edge. Is that correct?
The concrete that you see right there on the right, on that photo, represents the lot line.
Okay.
It's the eave of the roof that extends
Just the
over
eave,
property
but the
line.
roof itself on that piece is fine.
They
Okay.
maintain the lot line at the concrete, the roof structure would be the part over the line.
Commissioner Friedrich, can I jump in and ask, what happens if you enclose the stairs, take off that eave and enclose the stairs at the lot line?
They wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
The ordinance says there has to be a 6-foot side yard. They're
Okay.
taking the exception which allows the porch to encroach up to the lot line.
The only way that it's allowed is it's open.
Okay. That's what I thought, that's why I wanted, so, I'm sorry.
Okay, then I have two follow-up questions. So I can't tell that well with this photograph. So is the post, I guess that would be the westerly-most post for the roof, is that
That is,
to the west of the concrete?
that is what we took the dimensions to and then backed off a foot.
Okay.
So to those posts, it's 6.1 feet
Okay,
and 6.2 feet, but then it's got a 1 foot overhang.
yeah. So if you remove the overhang but left the rest of the roof, they'd still be compliant?
Yes.
They would
Okay.
be compliant.
Thank you.
Has everybody had a chance to see Mr. Beebe's packet?
We will need at least one copy for the minutes.
Yeah. It's here, somebody needs to refer to it again. Are there additional questions for Mr. Beebe, the property owners, or Mr. Kench? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh. Hearing no other questions from the board for the applicant or Mr. Kench, we will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak, please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Do we have anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak?
We do not.
Seeing no one, the public hearing for case ZBA 22-04 is closed. Mr. Kench, do we have any correspondence?
We do. Peter Coper, owner of 509 South University, and of course, we send out notices required by state law within 300 feet of the subject property. And so we had three individuals who called in. Pete Coper, 509 South University, no objections with the variance. Ken Williams, owner of 502 South University, just inquired the extent of the case and what they were looking to get the variance for. I had no objections. We had Judy and Mike McCracken, who own property at 1309 East Lincoln Street. There again.
That's for the second case.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh,
they're for the second case.
getting ahead of myself. Thank you. So that's the extent of it for that. And then we also have communications from our Department of Public Works, which you have in your packet. Really no objection. They did make some comments under the water department to make sure that we have, I'm assuming that each one of these have separate water services, but that's one of the things that we'll want to check to make sure we don't have a single water meter feeding both properties. So that's something that if approval is granted, we would direct them to our Public Works Department to verify that. So And then, of course, Manuela, city planner, she moved up pretty quick. She's doing a great job, but man, it's on the fast track there. So we were able to respond to them, those questions on the front end, so. And I think that's the extent of what I had. I don't know, is it the Department of Fire Safety? Of course, they have rental licenses on both of these properties, and both of those licenses could be maintained if these properties are sold, both the duplex and for the single family, so, okay?
Would those licenses automatically be maintained, or would the new owner have to?
They would run with the property. All the conditions under the housing and licensing standard would have to be met with the new owner, so.
These are currently one property tax ID, correct?
That is correct.
So they'd be split off 2 IDs? Okay.
Yeah, if approval is granted, then they would go through our lot split board, and 2 numbers would then be assigned to the property, so then they could be sold individually.
Would we like to discuss, or would we like to go through our findings of fact?
Let's go through the findings
Let's
of
go through the
fact.
findings of fact. Give me 1 second. I've got too many pieces of paper right here.
If you're not careful, you'll read the wrong communications.
I know. I'm trying to keep everything separate tonight. All right. Our first finding of fact, our applicants must show practical difficulty by demonstrating that all of the following conditions exist. This is in accordance with section 154.608.b of our zoning code. Finding 1, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zoning district. Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions normally include exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific property on the effective date of this chapter, exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary situation on the land, building, or structure, or use or development of the property immediately adjoining the property in question.
I would ask that everybody look at the applicant's response to that question in blue, where it lists what the chair just indicated. And the applicant's response said that none of the above apply. Now, if that's the case, therefore, this stipulation is not met. And that really confuses me.
Yes.
Because the rest of the rationale really doesn't address this particular contingency.
Exactly. Do we have any thoughts?
I guess this reminds me of the case we had back late spring, early fall on Fancher, and same neighborhood, same circumstances. We had a non-conforming property. And to me, I mean, this is a very similar case. And we looked, and really to make, and we're not making this a more conforming property. It's still a non-conforming property. But to me, the marketability of this property split would be more favorable than it currently is. And that's how I look at this property. You know, you can sit there and say, well, if we move the eave, the overhang, if we do this, if we, you know, we can do all kinds of things. But I guess, and I'm kind of going to go off memory here, but if this property were to, say, get wiped out by a tornado, we could not build this property back like this. Correct, Brian?
Correct.
So it would be, at best, a single-family property, and it would have to conform in every way to the current zoning standards, correct?
Correct. The duplexes would actually be required to be under a special use permit, under our current.
I mean,
zoning.
if either one of these, neither one of them could be built back as a,
I think the single family could, because we only regulate lot width.
but it would still have to conform in every way to
Absolutely.
current zoning.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I guess I kind of look at this as, you know, yeah, we're kind of, if this is passed, we kind of look beyond our current zoning guidelines, and we look at what is the property owner wanting and what the property owner feels is best in their case, and in their case, they feel that it would be best as a split piece of property. And I guess I see no other argument, because I guess I'd be in favor of passing this the way it sits, based on what I'm seeing and based on, you know, I live in the area. I am subject to these same exact rules, and maybe one day I may be forced to sit out here with this property owner is and appeal before the board. So I guess I'm looking at what is the property owner wanting, and, you know, the neighbors don't seem to be an objection, and I think either way, I can't really see this being a single family property owner. You know, I think this is in the neighborhood it's at, it's always going to be a rental property, so.
I am a neighbor to this property, and, you know, I would love to see 209 East Maple become a single-family home. And I think it could become a small single-family home, but I would like for people to look at this block, this area, and not just see rental properties, because there are families with children who live in this vicinity. It's not just rental properties.
I understand your argument. I live across from the jail, so.
My issue is with what Vice Chair Orlick brought up. The applicant himself says we don't meet the first criteria, and I don't know how we get past that. I don't know how we look past the applicant's own words.
I don't see how we're ever going to get, with the current property the way it exists, I don't see how we're ever going to get past the six or seven steps of meeting the criteria. I just don't see it. You know, so I'm looking at what the property owner is asking for, what the current property is in existence, and how we can best meet the needs of the property owner.
But I think we have to respect the zoning code, and the property owner's interest can't trump the zoning code.
Well, the zoning code was written after that. What'd you say, you had the property for 20 years?
25.
So he's owned the property in its current means for the last 20, 25 years.
And as long as it stays that way, it's fine.
I wish that the applicant, and I wish that you had at least attempted to address our first finding by saying these don't apply. I have a real problem with with moving forward. I have to just acknowledge that. I'm with Vice Chair Orlick on this. If the owners themselves don't see how their lot is, you know, so I guess we can move on to our second finding. Our second finding is that such a variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and in the vicinity. I agree with the applicant's answer to this one, that, you know, other homes and properties adjacent to this one as well as in this vicinity are not multiple properties on one lot. Finding 3, that the variance request is not one where the specific conditions pertaining to the property are so general or recurrent in nature as to make the formation of a general regulation for such conditions reasonably practicable. Any comments? Number 4, that the authorizing of such variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property. That authorizing of the variance will not materially impair the purposes of this chapter or the public interest.
And on that one, I have to wrestle in my mind with the fact that there is a repair, a change, a shift, a modification that near the end of our regular discussion was brought up, which would not require a variance.
Yes. Number 6, that the need for the variance is not created by any action of the applicant or previous owner. We have been through our findings of fact. Is there further discussion?
It seems to me that just to comply with the code is a fairly small change. So I'd have a tough time, I guess, voting in favor of a variance unless it could be shown that that is actually kind of a difficult, impractical thing to do.
If there's no additional discussion, I will entertain a motion on this case. Everybody looks to you, Vice Chair Ehrlich.
Okay. Now, keep in mind that all motions need to be made in the positive, as the chair previously indicated. I move to approve case number ZBA 22-05 in order to permit a variance, splitting the two conforming parcels, a variance of, 11 inches in the lot line separating the two, what would become the two separate properties.
Do we have a support?
Second.
All right, I think we should do this by roll call, please. Mr. Kinch?
White,
Yes.
Stressman,
Approve, yes.
Friedrich,
Nay.
Orlick,
Nay.
Raisinin.
Nay. This first motion did not pass.
No. We're good.
Yep, we're good. I encourage the applicants to work with an architect and an engineer to find a way to make your properties comply.
I think we can actually help them out through our office if they want to stop in.
Yeah, this is a pretty small item, but we don't want to start making small changes that absolutely undercuts the zoning.
But please do come see the city and talk with Mr. Kinch. I know the city wants to help you, so. Thank you very much. And give us a few moments to rifle papers, and we will move on to our second case.
Yeah, for my report.
Whenever you are ready, Mr. Kinch.
You're getting close. Good.
Well, I have completely misplaced my report.
You could creep or choose your stuff from this one for some
I
reason.
misplaced my report.
Oh, here, do you want to borrow mine?
Yes, I can. I'm sure it's here.
Oh, wait,
What do we need? I
he's looking.
did such a good job of tidying up, I lost it.
Could have. That's why we have alternate.
My wife was here, she said, probably right in front of you.
Here is my packet, if you would like to.
Yeah, I'm just, like I say, It's the Franklin Street. How's that?
Well, for the second case.
Yeah. Second case
This
is what we're
is
looking
That's
for.
the second case.
Oh, that is the second,
This
oh,
is
yep,
the
that is the
second
second case, yes, that's what
Yeah,
he,
I seriously don't know what I did with it.
Give it back to me.
there you go.
Yeah,
Here,
I
we'll
will.
we'll
Okay,
look at yours.
very fine.
If that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll roll with it. Thank you.
And just out of respect, because we're closer.
All righty, this next case we have here, we've identified as case number 22-05. This is an application that's been filed by Chris West, who resides on 1636 East Gaylord Street here in Mount Pleasant. They own a vacant lot at the corner of Kane and Cross Lanes, which is zone CD3L, which is one of our residential districts that larger in nature, has a minimum lot width of 90 feet. What we're looking at this evening, and we talked about this at our last meeting, of how we designate the frontage, the principal frontage, in relationship to the other property lines in siting a house on a property. And so what they're looking at this evening is consideration to be able to consider the secondary frontage where the facade and the main entrance would be located. Property is zone CD3L, as well as all surrounding properties. Residential uses are permitted in the district, so this would be a conforming use. If approval is granted, they could simply apply for a building permit, and we could get that issued, and they could begin construction. But the approval here would allow the secondary frontage on Kane Street to be considered for the facade. The secondary frontage would be Cross Lanes. The east property line would then become the rear property line, and the south line would become the side lot line. So when I sat down with the applicant, we started looking at the neighboring properties, and I'll share those photos here with you in a second. This is the section here, the facade. We talk about principal frontage and secondary frontage as well, and there again, it dictates all other requirements in the code. Site plan that we're looking at this evening, generally we'd take the narrow frontage on the corner lot that would be considered our principal frontage. That's the area of the building that is regulated both with window openings as well as roof pitch height, and well as the setbacks from the property lines or build to lot lines. He would like to situate this so that his frontage would actually, main entrance as well as his garage location would be off the Kane Street. You have this in your packet. We'd spent a little time with the applicant. Unlike other neighborhoods, Kane Street, virtually every property that's a corner lot actually fronts, the homes front out on that lot. And we shared some of those the images up here. You can see that they're all sited on the Kane Street and the corner lots, both on the south lot that abuts this one and the lot directly across the corner on the north side of Cross Lanes. These are the proposed elevations that the applicant is looking at. The roof pitch can comply with the ordinance requirements. All other setbacks can be met, as well as lot coverage. There again, we're dealing with a fairly large lot in this case. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to go back to this. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
I do, Mr. Kinch.
Yes.
So one of your recommendations had been if we approve this variance that on the side that would not be the front of the house anymore, increase the amount of glazing on that side.
Yes.
In elevation drawings that you have here, it shows 2 windows on that side.
That is correct.
Could the 10% glazing be met by just increasing the size of those windows, or would it need another additional window in that?
There again, I mean, that's one of the options that the board can look at this evening. If they consider allowing the Kane Street as the facade, they can also require that the elevation that would typically be the facade along cross lanes to be updated with the proper glazing, the 10% minimum.
Okay.
So it's pretty close now.
Okay, so
I
just
would
be
guess.
slightly smaller windows possibly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And based on the looks of the house, it doesn't look like that would be a problem to increase the window size in that area, so.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I was going to take us to Google Earth and kind of fan around there. I don't know if you folks had a chance to look at the site, but virtually all the homes on Kane Street all front on there, regardless of the narrow frontage or the long frontage. And so it is somewhat unique compared to other neighborhoods, so.
Okay.
Yes,
Question. So the house on, I guess it'd be the south side of Cross Lanes?
yes.
What's the glazing on the end of that house look like?
I don't know what the glazing is on that, but there again, we wouldn't treat that as the front facade. We would treat it as the Kane Street. That's where their entrance is. That's where they come in off the street.
I understand that, but we're gonna make a requirement for this house. I mean, if the one next door doesn't have a requirement, why would we do that?
Because the others were built under the prior
Yeah,
zoning ordinance.
We're trying to
And
be as close to the
that house
current
is
code as possible.
considerably more narrow.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
we're trying to do, yeah. Any other questions for me at this point? Do I need to bring up that Google map? Do you want to see those areas, or you good? Okay. I'm good. I'm going to leave the slideshow up here then, and we'll just, we'll have the applicant kind of talk about the project. I can tell you, we spent probably a couple years with them on different lots throughout the city, and they've purchased this home. And so we spent a little time kind of inventorying what the makeup of that neighborhood is. And ordinances, master plan, talk about the character of the neighborhood. And so as we started going through this process, I was even surprised, so. But we'll let him come forward.
Mr. West, if you'd like to come forward. As you come forward to present your case, please state your name and address for our record.
My name's Chris West. I live at 1636 East Gaylord Street, Mount Pleasant.
My packet.
And they're buying this lot, and, you know, we're getting prices together and all that stuff. Don't want to, our big deal was we wanted to conform with the neighborhood, and this seemed out of place. And going to Kane Street seemed to be the right thing to do. So if I'm going to invest that much money, I want to have it where I want it, you know, so it looks good with the neighborhood.
And so you were building this for yourself then? You're not a
Correct.
contract? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, let me, because I live a block and a half away on King Street. And I think the key issue here is maintaining the character of the neighborhood, because virtually all the properties on King Street, which is a very short street, supposed to be more the other side of High, but that went away, other side of Broadway, that went away a long time ago. So they were all built late 60s, early 70s. And so I think the crucial thing here is maintaining the character of the neighborhood. And so I think there's 2 points to that. Point number one is absolutely by having the main frontage be Kane Street, that's up and down the street. I walk it a lot, that would be fine. The second point would be by the same token, the secondary frontage. I agree with the commentary that was in the packet. As they're stated, as they're shown, those windows are out of character with the neighborhood. They're too small for that kind of a frontage. So I'll just say right up front, I would certainly support this under this maintain the character of the neighborhood, as long as we do something to increase the size of those windows, which will face Cross Lane.
Can I ask, how big would they have to be? Just curious.
10%. 10% of the
10% more
wall
than they
area.
are?
In the wall area, we don't take into consideration the gable, so I don't think you're gonna have to increase them that much to bring this thing into
I don't
compliance.
see a problem with that.
And I don't, it doesn't matter as you look at those houses, it doesn't matter whether we're going to add a third window or increase the two that you have in the thing. Either way, it's going to maintain the character, but right now, it just kind of screams this was supposed to be something else.
I understand.
Commissioner Stressman?
If this is a new construction, then this is going to apply, the current setbacks for building will apply. So what is going to be the distance from the curb to the front of the house? And how much closer will that be than what the other houses that are all seem to be lined up? How far away from the curb are they currently? And how far away from the curb will this house be? And I'm curious as, having larger windows, and I'm just guesstimating by looking at the placement of the vacant lot, that this house is gonna be much closer to the curb. And by having larger windows, you're gonna have pedestrians walking by the house, and they could easily look in the house and see inside. So I'm just curious, what the setback's gonna be on that front facade.
You want me to speak or you?
No, go ahead.
Well, my first thought is, let's just say the house was turned to cross lanes.
Yeah,
It's much, when they walk past with this house, they're more apt to look in the windows then than they are this way. Because this is so much wider that you're a long ways from the sides.
And also, there is no sidewalk on Cross Lanes
Right.
there, so they'd have to be walking in the street.
Right.
And there's a 20-foot setback, so they're gonna be 20, am I reading your
I think
plan
so.
correctly? That's 20 feet away, and,
Double.
is that right?
He's actually showing what the minimums are for the code. He's actually sitting back along cross lanes based on
Oh,
this
more
diagram
than
about
that.
40 feet.
About 40 feet
So
back,
He's gonna
okay.
be, he's gonna be at or about where the house is to the east.
So his house will basically kind of be in line with,
It's gonna be very close with that.
okay.
Going up King Street, it will be,
this.
it'll be set back like these other ones?
Cross lane, it'll be set back a little bit on
I
cross.
thought it'd be handy.
Because that's a fairly deep lot.
Yes.
That way. It's not, we had to move them up to the sidewalk.
Oh, no, not CD3.
Okay, we're getting a little bit off track here. Are there other things that you'd like to present to us, Mr. West?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
Just, I think it conforms to the neighborhood very well. And obviously, I'm gonna keep things just like you guys want, the setbacks and things so that we conform again with the front of the other houses and all that stuff. And because we'd be doing it to Kane Street, it's actually gonna leave, as I stated, a lot more room on those sides, a lot more comfortable in the front. So that's really all I've got.
Are there other questions for Mr. West?
I'm going to chime in real quick. What you have on your site plan are showing our code minimums for the CD3L. The front setback, if we consider, if it's approved, it would be a 30-foot front setback off from Kane Street, which their site plan shows you're in the 35 to 40 range, more than likely. So they're going to be at or about where the existing houses are now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. West. If we have other questions, we'll call you back to the podium.
Okay, thank you.
All right, since we have no other questions for the applicant at this time, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak with us this evening?
There is nobody.
I will now close the public hearing for ZBA case number 22-05. Mr. Kent, do we have any correspondence for this case?
Yep, you have one, you have our DPW requirements that are going to have to be met. Assuming approvals are granted, they will file application for building permits through my office, and we will ensure that all DPW requirements can be met before permits are issued. We had one other piece of communication, which was, tried to share that earlier. I should have shared it then, I guess.
There you go.
I'm struggling tonight, you have to send me home. Judy and Mike McCracken own 1309 East Lincoln Street, have no objections to this request. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's discuss.
Yes, we can do the finding of fact.
Let's do the findings of fact. Let's see. Oh my, we are just not doing well with paper this evening.
It does seem that way, yes.
The applicant must show practical difficulty by just demonstrating that all of the following conditions exist. He must be in accordance with section 164.608.b of our zoning code. Number one, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zoning district. Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions normally include exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific property on the effective date of this chapter, exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary situation on the land, building, or structure, or use or development of the property immediately adjoining the property in question. How do we find?
And I think with one exception, which was a house built on Kane, 3 houses south of Pickard, all the other houses on that street were built late 60s, early 70s, as I indicated. And so I think the exceptional use is that you've got a relatively rare, a piece of property that was the only one pretty much not developed 50 years after. And then the exceptional circumstances, you want to have the new one conform to the rest of them.
Any other comments? I will move on. Number 2, that such a variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and in the vicinity.
And there again, the substantial property right is facing onto Kane, so you have the lot setbacks are in a much better position than they would be if you made it cross lanes.
I will add in at this juncture that I agree with increasing the window size on the facade facing cross lanes that some of my other commissioners have mentioned. Number 3, that the variance request is not one where the specific conditions pertaining to the property are so general or recurrent in nature as to make the formulation of a general regulation for such conditions reasonably practicable.
One could argue that the recurrent position was already there. We're trying to conform to it in a way that the zoning ordinance doesn't quite reflect, because it's relatively rare to have this big a property vacant for this long in the city of Mount Pleasant.
There's only 1 lot left. It can't be repetitive.
Yeah, I can't
Right,
remember.
they cannot be,
So-
yeah, this is the last one. Number 4, that the authorizing of such a variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property. Again, we're trying to conform to the adjacent properties that are unique in terms of how they're situated on their lots. Number 5, that authorizing of the variance will not materially impair the purposes of this chapter or of the public interest. No. And that the need for the variance is not created by any action of the applicant or previous owner. And it was not. I think we've gone through the findings of fact. I think the only point of discussion that was raised by Commissioner Friedrich and Vice Chair Orlick and concurred by myself that we increase the size of the windows on the facade facing cross lanes to be more in line with what already exists. So other than that, is there any other discussion? Then I will entertain a motion on case ZBA 22-05.
I move to approve case ZBA 22-05, taking into consideration that this request involve a rare vacant lot in an existing neighborhood, where this house needs to conform to the existing orientation of the houses, provided that the applicant increase the proposed size of the windows facing cross lanes by at least 10% and meets all DPW requirements.
Second.
We have a motion and a support by Commissioner Friedrich. All All in favor of the motion Vice Chair Orlick made, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, please indicate by saying nay. There is no opposition. This motion passes. The ayes have it. This is the time during the hearing when the floor is opened up to anyone who wishes to come forward and speak. We typically reserve this time for comments that are not related to a case being presented this evening. We have no one in the audience. Do we have anyone on Zoom who'd like to speak?
We do not.
We will close the official public hearing. On the agenda is old business. Mr. Kinch, do you have old business to present to the board?
Nope. We
No,
don't have any
old
under-
business. On the agenda is new business. Mr. Kinch, do we have any new business?
Under new business, Laura's put together a meeting schedule for 2023. Given that we don't have any applications for December, we thought we'd introduce this evening for approval.
I'll give everyone a moment to look over our 2023 schedule, and then I will entertain a motion to approve this schedule of meetings.
Move to approve the 2023 meeting schedule.
Do I have a support?
Or
We have a support. All in favor of our 2023 schedule, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you so much. We have a 2023 zoning board schedule. Let's see, is there any other business to discuss?
Nothing to report?
All right, I know CMU just kicked off playing Western, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The November 16th, 2022 meeting of the Mount Pleasant Zoning Board